This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 479 for the week of March 22nd, 2020. Hey there. Welcome back to Kanzenshuu, the podcast, an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fan site. Kanzenshuu, we cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening and a little bit of entertaining. Occasionally. Last episode was September. It's currently March. Whoops. I told you many times that we work on extremely long project management timelines. And, whoops. Man, a lot has gotten away from us over the last few months, and those resources, those priorities have been assigned elsewhere, and you're going to hear a little bit about that here on this podcast episode. Again, I welcome you back. My name is Mike. You may see me around as Vegito EX. Theoretically, I'm the host, the producer of this podcast. I once had that job. I think I continue to have that job. I'm not going to beat around the bush because what you're going to hear this episode basically tells you what the hell have we been doing for months and months on end. I'm going to speak with three folks on this here episode. We're going to hear from more in the coming weeks. First up, you're going to hear Heath Check-In, one of the co-administrators. We assign ourselves fake titles here. Heath is going to chat with me about some of the stuff that he's done on the website proper itself. Stuff like the relaunch, the recombining, and the new information in the animation production guide there on Kanzenshuu. We're going to talk about website stuff for a little bit, and then you're going to hear from two of our Wiki editors. Terez is going to join us for the first time on the podcast, talk about some of the stuff she's been working on and overseeing and coordinating on our Wiki. And then joining us after that, Ken, you may see him around as Detective X, also going to join us, chat about what he has been working on the Wiki. I guess I'll just say up front, we still don't have a launch, whether that's a soft or a hard launch. What does a soft launch even mean in this kind of a context? Is it just that we put it up and don't tell anyone? We don't know. But we are going to tell you, like, all right, you guys just keep talking about this and there's nothing to show for it. So does this exist? Who cares if it exists? If we can't see it, who truly cares? Well, hopefully you, dear listener, will care by the time you are done hearing what everyone has to say about it. I'm going to chat with everyone about just what we've all been doing. So I just want to get right on into it, give you a little bit of a catch up on what's been up with Kanzenshuu for a few months. And then I'll join you on the flip side to talk a little bit about what I've been doing and what some of the upcoming plans for the website as a whole and the podcast are. So we're going to go that order. I think we're going to do Heath, Terez, Ken. Join us for those chats coming in your ears right now. Hey, stranger. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, good sir?
I'm good. Who are you again?
I'm a guy that doesn't do anything.
That's not true. You know that's not true.
With our website.
You know that's not true.
I wait for the random email of, hey, Heath, I broke this thing. Can you fix it?
Stop it. That's not true. That's totally true. Heath, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good overall.
Yeah, well, we were just talking. I don't know where this is going to go, but that's fine. Hey, so I'm chatting with people about what the hell we've all been working on. We haven't had a podcast in forever.
I heard that through the grapevine, that you actually talk to people now.
I do that. Apparently they're taking my calls now. So I don't know what changed in the last few months. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about. Some website proper stuff, because in terms of non-wiki, it's really you, me, and Julian these days. And then there's tons of other people doing tons of other stuff on the wiki. So I figure
God bless their souls.
Can't even express my gratitude and my shock and awe. You and I can talk about what's going on the website proper and then get into some wiki stuff. Big thing. Tell me about animation guide stuff.
So long ago, and by long ago, I mean Dragon Ball Super.
I was going to say, you want to pull up a chair, get a drink for this one?
Yes. Well, when the website first started, we had a production guide that we had put together to slowly track all of the random production credits for various episodes of Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT.
Right.
It was all pretty straightforward. And then Dragon Ball Super happened. And kind of the same thing that we did over in the translations section of the site. It was kind of like, this really needs a revamp because it's really hard to track stuff down. And unlike before where you could easily go through the credits, or in my mind you could. Say, for instance, there was one animation supervisor for an episode of Dragon Ball Z. There was one director.
Right, it's nice and easy.
The director did the storyboard. There was a limited number of key animators credited, whether there were more uncredited or not, but it was fairly easy to track through and easy to organize. And then Dragon Ball Super happened, and it
was a disaster.
Hit the fan, and there would be like 25 key animators with 3, animation supervisors and 2 storyboard artists and a director for each section, and it just became a jumbled mess. It was hard to keep track of. It was hard to keep the episode guide itself just updated because it became so overwhelming. Jake, bless his soul, how he kept doing synopses, I have no idea. So it got to the point where we need to reevaluate how we're doing this. We have a production guide and we had the animation styles guide
right
at the same time. And it was always kind of a match made in heaven. Like, these two things were produced, I guess, or created at separate times in different eras.
Yeah.
And in some talks with AJ, we both kind of agreed, yeah, this would probably be a good time to marry these two sections together, kind of create one all-encompassing animation production guide. And that's kind of where we kicked it off. And then I decided to step things up a bit farther and said, hey, well, let's really catalog everything. And then say I don't get an episode guide page done, I have a database in there that I can just throw credits into.
Mm-hmm.
People can still go see them. I can reference them. Other people can reference them. And that's kind of where the ball kind of got rolling with that. And I can't even remember it. I think it was under development for almost 3 years, I want to say. It took a while to import everything, get the database structure all put together, make sure everything links properly between sections, because that is all done with scripting. Like, I have nothing to do with that as far as us manually inserting all those links. Like, God bless PHP and jQuery, because those saved our butts big time. And the animation production guide, the database section specifically, went in. I started creating that before we even did the revamp on the translation section.
Yeah.
So a lot of like the search functionality and the filtering all actually came from the animation production guide. It just hadn't been fully completed yet and wasn't live.
Got it. Yeah.
So
sure.
I stole a lot of that and moved it over there, and here we are today. And I am so happy that it is done. And
yeah,
of course, well after Super was done, but now we have Super Dragon Ball Heroes. So
right. So every few weeks there's something new to add. And you picked up the slack for me on that, because I was keeping up with the episode guides on those, and it was easy and just one every once in a while. Great. I got the synopsis. I got all the credits done. I was doing credits, and I was checking the name here, there with Julian, but even I was able to go through the credits on those episodes, and even that got away from me. So the fact that you're at least able to take up the credits there. So give me more of a rundown. So there's this kind of combined version of these two previous guides we had on the website. So if you go to this new, in quotes, guide now, what's the kind of thing that you can do in that guide?
So I decided to break it up into 3 main sections. The production information section, which largely just looks at the overall production process, the animation process itself, what the different staff positions do, which have changed over the years.
Yeah.
So animation has really adjusted how they produce episodes and movies, as far as going from your standard traditional paper drawing to a more digital format, although all the key animation, for the most part, is still done with pencil and paper, and it's just scanned and transitioned into a digital format for painting and animation. So we wanted to kind of separate that out, and we had already previously reworked the animation process, so that more or less just got imported over. Then we did a complete breakdown and a redo of explaining what the different production staff positions are, what their responsibilities are, what they actually do, why some productions have them and some don't. Really introduce more of like the second key animator, which was never really a thing early on in Dragon Ball Z. It was kind of used in GT, but sparingly. It's more of a modern technique of really refining things. And then we did a animation quality kind of breakdown. And a lot of that came from AJ, having some conversations with him back and forth. I ended up writing the whole thing, but it was well worth the while, I think.
Was that a jab? I can't really tell.
You can ask him.
Okay.
That was no, it was he would provide the reference, and then he gave me a script he had written for a presentation he gave at a con.
Got it.
And said, here, maybe use this kind of as a backbone. Sorry, my writing is terrible. And then I reworked it, and that's what we came up with. And I think it came together very well. I like the references we have in there, the things that you can actually see why you would say something about one thing but not about the other, and things like that. What is bad animation? What's the difference between that and bad artwork?
Sure, yeah.
The difference between how something flows. Is it fluid? Is it rigid? Kind of things like that. So more of a artist's background, which AJ really brought to the table on that one. And then kind of like we previously discussed, the next section was databases and catalogs. The staff database covers pretty much every series to date. It's up to date through Super Dragon Ball Heroes episode 21 or episode 1 of the new arc that they started. And then a supervisor catalog, which AJ and I have not totally figured out what's going to happen with it yet. This is more of the import from the animation styles guide that we used to have on the site.
Sure.
But a lot of it, to my fault, was not written the way we want it. So we were going to rework how we do more of the individual studio and animator pages.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, this was written before Super was really happening, hot and heavy, and Super complicated the hell out of this section. So if you scroll through it at the bottom where we break down animators, it was all nice for Dragon Ball and Z and GT. And then you get to Dragon Ball Super where there are so many animation supervisors, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
And we're like, how the hell are we going to cover all this? So that's kind of where we're sitting right now. So that section is still kind of in limbo. The main page, I think, is fantastic again. I think it really lays everything out, explains a lot of things that were happening in Dragon Ball Super, but also really, I think for the first time for a lot of fans, break down how studios were used, how they were called in, which studios worked on which sections of the series, and how it was kind of an ebb and flow of bringing certain studios in when they were needed, or that there were a lot of times, I can't remember off the top of my head which studio it was, but the only reason that they worked on Dragon Ball Z for 3 or so episodes was because Toei had already retained them, and they were working on one of the Dr. Slump movies at the time. So it just happened that they were there, so they used them, and that was the only time that they ever worked on Dragon Ball. So, wow. You know, some of that stuff is kind of neat to go back and take a look at that. And then the last section is what I like to call mini guides. We've never, I don't know, tidbits, random little things that are strewn across the site, and we never know what to do with them. I've started kind of incorporating them into larger guides. I don't know if we want to throw a link in like the tidbits or
I know features, that's the kind of thing people are like, how do I use Kanzenshuu? And I'm like, well, it's a website, so you click around and find things. It's like, all right, but how do I find this thing? Like, all right, that's a legitimately good question. I don't actually know how you would, if you didn't know like the structure of guides, how you would find that. So that's something that we constantly struggle with on the site, is how do you find something like, oh, all right, I want to find Toriyama's designs that he did for the TV series and the movies. Well, that's a subsection of this animation section guide now.
Right, which used to be in the production guide, which the breakdown for Dragon Ball Kaiser Mastering is also one of these mini guides that came over from the production guide.
Sure.
And then I wrote basically an all new, just general credits overview section, which I had a ton of fun doing. It breaks down the Japanese name structure and why so many times we actually screw up Japanese names.
Yeah.
Because they're not documented anywhere with the furigana.
I was going to say, I remember a fairly recent time when we thought the man's name was Naoyoshi Yamamuro.
Yeah.
That's recent that we knew.
Forever, until all of a sudden, you know, a random interview comes out and they actually provide the pronunciation.
Right.
With the kanji. And you're like, oh, So we've been calling this guy by the wrong name for like 20 years. Cool. And then also I have 50,000 pages on a website to go update. So that's fun.
And that's what really helps when you start database-izing things.
Yes.
It starts pulling over just the same data.
And I can honestly tell you how many times when I was going through by hand compiling the database and doing all the searches and comparing credits from across the site so I could compile it all, how many different spellings of certain names I actually came across. And so I was able,
even on our own site,
creating this database, correcting these, and making everything as uniform as possible across everything. I would even go to that specific page, per se, in the episode guide, and I would update it in there so that it would all match.
Yeah.
So it really also gave me a broad stroke to go through everything and unify as many of the names as possible. I'm sure there are some that kind of sneak through the crack, but it's the way it is when you're documenting 50,000 people. So
I know, it's crazy.
I think the last part of that page was basically breaking down the credit structure, which is actually pretty simple. I think some people think, maybe not think, but they overcomplicate it a little bit. But your opening credit structure, series structures, you have ending credit structure, which is specific to that episode.
Mm-hmm.
Movies are a little different. I know more recent anime have kind of gone away from that. I know for a while the big trend was we'll have a giant opening sequence, and then when the episode ends, it's just the next episode preview. Episode's done. And they completely cut out the ending credits by incorporating them into the opening.
It's a good section. Go check it out. There's a lot of stuff in there.
It is. I mean, it's pretty jam-packed. I think a lot of our guides anymore have really just become the density of information it's all there.
Yeah.
And it's heavy.
The nice thing is people like it. I mean, the page views on those, the numbers don't lie. I mean, people love these sections, so we're always happy to work on them. In terms of other regular website stuff, I don't know how much there is. We're just working on things behind the scenes usually.
Yeah, I've been jumping around between a few things, between Dragon Ball Super manga.
Yeah.
Kind of keeping up with that. I know you've been jumping over there every once in a while. Super Dragon Ball Heroes, just finally got that update again. I've very slowly been working on Dragon Ball Super episode pages, which will be up at some point. I've gotten a fair chunk done of that, actually.
Nice.
Just need to make things live. And the movie guide was the other thing
right. Yep.
Focusing on for a while. If people will ever get back to me on certain sections, but
don't know what you're talking about. All right.
Don't either.
So tell me about the wiki a little bit. So I would say over the last year or maybe even two, your role in the wiki has been less on the actually writing full pages, more technical directing, working on the templates and anything we need in that area, offering advice, thoughts, just kind of helping coordinate things while everyone else is doing, the nitty gritty writing. Is there anything that you have worked on? And then I guess more broadly than that, what are some of the cool things you've seen that people are working on that you're excited for people to check out?
So my role kind of transitioned. I know when we first started, I think there were only 5 of us that were really kind of working on it. So I was actually doing more page productions, but a lot of that was more even as a test run of, hey, these templates I made and this background structure, is it actually functional?
Yeah, like how does this even work? Will this work?
So I'm going to make a page just to test it out, and then I would end up making a bunch of pages. And since then, I have kind of more transitioned into technical help, making templates, adding some functionality when Terez needs it. So it's been really fun, and I mean this wholeheartedly, to watch what some people have been working on and what they've been doing. The Angels section, a lot of more of the recent Dragon Ball Super sections where people have been deep diving into characters, into angels, into just the god hierarchy has been mind-blowing, because there's half that stuff that I never would have pulled that in, and the references, specifically like Terez and AJ, what they've been pulling in, it's been phenomenal to see a lot of that especially all come together, and then to also be witness to following people as they discuss it and seeing it, and helping each other out. That's been really fun to watch. So hopefully we can get a lot more sections live. I know you've been previewing a lot, throwing some out there. I think there are some good ones that are coming up that we were planning on sharing.
Yeah. It's been a while since we shared any pages, but there's some that I think are very close to being ready. I'm very excited to share them. Something that I've mentioned to all the Wiki folks, but Heath, honestly, when you and I met and then we decided the four of us to merge into Kanzenshuu in 2012, I was like, this is it. This is going to be my last group of Dragon Ball friends. Like, we're done.
Yeah.
This is we're in the end game at this point. I truly thought there was nothing else on the horizon. Even when Battle of Gods came out, it was like, all right, this is a new thing, but it's just us. That's it.
I think, I don't know if we've joked about it specifically on the podcast, but we legitimately had discussions, I think you and I more, of, hey, we're going to merge all this stuff. We'll port everything over. It's one website. And then we're going to kick back and put our feet up. And, hey, we're done. Cake. Easy. Let's retire. Where's the retirement home? Do they have cases of beer? And then here we are. And it's like, I know personally I'm super busy between my family and life and work, but I'm still having so much fun and all the new people. It's very energizing.
It is.
Which is
good.
That's how you stay doing what you love to do. I'm enjoying it. More so, I guess, from a parental perspective of just watching everyone like, oh, look, they did that thing. That's so cool. I wish I could do that. I miss that.
Absolutely.
Okay, now I gotta go change a diaper.
It's true, though. I mean, I really do think we all feed off each other, and one excitement births another excitement somewhere else, and a new discovery, and that leads to something else. It's really fun. I honestly do think that the work we do and the conversations we have are some of the best Dragon Ball conversations that exist on the internet, and no one else is privy to them at the moment.
I know.
So I hope to change a lot about that in the future, but I'm really excited. I'm glad you're excited to continue watching as it all goes on. I don't know.
And it helps because now we can steal a lot of things and put them on the website.
Exactly.
In like 20 years. So yeah, I follow people around and make very minor edits, and then I get called out for them later of like, hey, what'd you do? Oh, I cleaned up your scan because I'm anal.
I know. You and I do a lot of that. It's like, I'm going to, adjust that and do the levels. And, oh, I actually scanned that. We don't need that version. Because, I mean, we really do. Everything on there should be, and for the most part it's our original material. We're the ones scanning it. We're taking the captures. We're buying. I'm going to hopefully talk about this with Julian a little bit. We're buying the actual things so we can, do the firsthand investigation and, fact checking, all that jazz. That's important to us. We want to,
because we're like
make sure.
Super nerds or something.
Final words. What you got?
Final words. I mean, I think the best is still yet to come for us, which I don't know if I would have said that 10 years ago.
I know, right?
But I'm just excited to where this goes, and when the wiki finally goes live, I hope everybody enjoys it, because it's been agony, but a very fun, fulfilling agony.
Yeah,
of getting this done.
Hold on. You say the word done. I think we got to set expectations though, because it's not like we're gonna launch it and then every attack will have a page, every character will have a page, and it'll all be done. Like that's not what we're going to have for you right away.
Well, and it's also, I think we have to set the expectation, just like the website, in my mind, will never be done. There will always be something to add.
Absolutely, yeah.
And especially as new content from Toriyama and Toyotaro actually come out, then we have to change everything and expand it and adjust. And so it's we'll be going for quite a while. And with all the new friends I've made, that makes it just all the more sweeter.
Absolutely.
And random Saturday night conversations about just the most random life things that have nothing to do with Dragon Ball. And some of those are very rewarding.
Yeah.
And I enjoy them. So
totally agree. All right, man, I'm going to let you go because we got crazy times ahead of us.
We do. And my children are watching Frozen 2 upstairs. So I've been beckoned.
Well, you have a good one. We'll, of course, be in touch, and let's get on the mic a little more often, huh?
I think I might have some more free time coming up.
Yeah. All right, dude. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, man.
So, first time on the show.
Hi.
Terez, welcome.
Good to be here, I guess.
So, Wiki's chugging along, right? We're all done. We're ready to go. Launch. It's coming up.
Done. Right. Yeah. That's a good joke. We are bogged down in just the smallest of most unbelievably trivial details, and it's a lot of fun.
It is super fun. So what I'm theoretically doing, and this is the first one I'm recording, so I have no idea how others are going to go. I'm checking in with folks, seeing like, all right, Kanzenshuu hasn't had a podcast in forever. Yeah, there's been a little news here and there. What the hell are they all doing? Like, I think people know that Kanzenshuu isn't anyone's actual job. This is all a hobby thing we do in our spare time.
Right.
And by spare time, we mean actually all day long. But there's a lot going on, and I just want to check in. I know because I have secret access to see everything, but I think people are really excited to hear what's going on. And a lot of the stuff you've been doing is kind of laying groundwork for other things. And then that transitions to like another major project, which transitions then to another major project. So why don't you get me started first with Sumitomo? How did that get started? What does that actually consist of right now, and how insane and satisfying is it?
Yeah, well, music is kind of like my life's obsession. That's what I went to school for. I've played piano since I was able to climb up on the piano bench. It's basically my whole life. But up until now, I haven't really done a whole lot of work on music stuff for the Wiki. And Sumitomo is my favorite Dragon Ball composer. I love all of them. I don't choose sides in the Kikuchi versus Falconer debate. I like both. I like everything. I love music.
Get this centrist bullshit off my show. Come on.
Well, it's funny because in classical music, I'm totally different. I listen to Chopin and Bach, and that's it. I don't care about any other composers.
Oh, that's so funny.
Just those two. Yeah. So I'm like totally not that person when it comes to like, the stuff that I've actually studied in the past. But when it comes to Dragon Ball, I love everybody. But Sumitomo he's recent, he's on my mind, and he's also my favorite. So, what I was doing is making episode pages for Dragon Ball Super, and I kind of tried to branch off of that and do all of the characters that were introduced in Dragon Ball Super, especially the Tournament of Power characters, and all of their techniques and universe pages and everything that stems off of that. Actually, I'm trying to remember how I got into the music recently, and I don't remember. It was something that led me to that, but you know how it goes. You're just working on something, you're like, oh my God, I gotta do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you were working on all the super stuff, but then at the same time, you're also doing Kai, the final chapters, which I know a lot of people are upset. I don't know if that's the right word, but we don't have a full guide to the final chapters on the website proper. That was always like a low priority project for Heath and I.
Yeah.
But you wanted to have it on there.
It was actually the first thing I did when I started working on the Wiki. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I did. I was like, well, you guys only have guides for the Japanese version. And so everybody goes and looks for a Kai episode number, and it's like totally not the right episode,
right.
Because it's just so confusing with only the Japanese version in the guides and everybody else in the world. Not just, not just us for a change.
Right.
Everybody else has the final chapters. So that was the first thing I did. I started making pages for the final chapters. I'm calling it Dragon Ball Z Kai pages instead of Dragon Ball Kai pages.
Right.
And that's such a subtle difference. I just always worry that people are not going to get it and still end up on the wrong page.
I know. We got to bring back some flashing banners, I think, on all these pages.
Yeah. So that was the first thing I did on the Wiki. And then I went to Dragon Ball Super and got off into that for a really long time. And then Broly came out, and I started working on Broly page and got really into the music for that. Oh, I remember what got me back into the music now. Dr. Papa de Boma is a Latin American YouTuber who is also really into Sumitomo, and he's been contacting him. And Sumitomo sent him a draft version of Broly's Rage and Sorrow from the Broly movie, which is really awesome. And I got so into it, and I was just going to do the Broly soundtrack. I was like, I'm going to limit myself to this. But then this is something that I already knew. But when I got into working on it, I realized I needed to start with Resurrection F because the Frieza themes in the Broly movie originate in Resurrection F. So I got into working on Resurrection F, and then I realized that some of those tracks were reused from earlier things like Battle of Gods, and then that parallels to the Kai soundtrack, and then I got into the Kai soundtrack, and I was like, oh my goodness, I gotta do it all. So Tyson, also known as T. Hallams, had started a catalog of the episode scene by scene usages of the Sumitomo tracks in Super. And he did, I think, about 40 episodes of Super and then got busy with other stuff and kind of left it to the side. So I finished his Super catalog and I went back and did Kai too, because a lot of the music between Kai and Super is the same.
Right. All right. So define this for me. So when we talk about catalogs, we actually have a fair number of, you see those M numbers for Kikuchi's score.
Right.
Those are actual numbers that the production side uses when doing the placement and cataloging where songs happened, where they were in, chronologically in production. That doesn't exist for Sumitomo's score as far as we know.
It does. We actually do know that it exists because on his blog, the staff blog,
okay.
There's one place where they talk about we start recording from M1 and we go to the end.
Oh,
so
okay. So they have one.
Yes, they have the catalog, but we don't have it. And so it's like I can try to get Sumitomo to maybe share his catalog with us, which he might do or he might not do. And then I want to know like all the track titles for the tracks that never got released and everything like that. But if he doesn't give us his catalog, then in order to keep everything straight, we have to make our own.
Right.
And this is something that is done with pretty much every classical composer in the history of written music. Because some of them keep their own catalogs, but even when they do keep their own catalogs, there are often gaps in those catalogs, like tracks that don't have a number.
Sure.
And in order to differentiate that piece from another one, you have to make your own catalog and fit everything into it. So that's what I'm doing with Sumitomo, and I'm doing it basically chronological by scene.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't care what date it was released, like the introduction to the recap of the extended version of Battle of Gods, is the very first track in the catalog, even though it broadcast later than the movie in the theaters did. Yeah. Like scene-wise, that's the first track. So I do it in order for Battle of Gods, and all of those have a prefix of 1. And then I move on to Kai, and we have a prefix of 2. And I start scene-wise at the beginning with those, and then go through Resurrection F, then Super, and then Broly.
Got it.
Then I'll be done.
Very nice. And so what this really will then allow us to do is then on each of those individual pages, whether it be a movie or whether it be a random Kai episode, a random Super episode, like you said, have that scene by scene breakdown of here are all the pieces of background music that played in this episode. And while we maybe have a title for some of them, we did get 2 volumes of the Super soundtrack. We did get a very abbreviated Final Chapters digital only soundtrack release in France.
Right, but for Kai especially, there's so many unreleased tracks that just don't have official names or numbers.
Right.
So on the Wiki, we will be referring to those by our in-house catalog that we are making.
Right. And then where applicable, we can, of course, list the official titles or anything like that. But it just makes it easier or even possible to refer back and forth to things that otherwise you'd be like intro. You'd make up a title, and maybe that is reminiscent of what Kanzenshuu 3000 had to do as he was doing his Kikuchi and Beyond kind of documentation project. He had his own personal site for where he would make up, I got to call this something, so I'm going to call this blah, blah, blah. And that ended up, in some cases, that ended up taking on the air of an official name when it was never intended to necessarily be that. So I really do think a catalog helps get around that by making it clear, like this is a unique piece, and maybe it has a title, but this is the designation for it.
Right. And fans do come up with their own titles for these unreleased Sumitomo tracks. But sometimes, you have one fan that rips it over here and gives it this title. Then you have another fan over there that rips it and gives it a different title. So you've got, 2 or 3 or even more competing titles for the same track on YouTube. And how do you even find these? You can't Google, Sumitomo unreleased track for X episode,
Yeah.
You Google Sumitomo unreleased and see what comes up,
Right.
and who knows what you're going to get. So we have to have some kind of, central organizing catalog to keep everything straight for the wiki. And I hope that other people will find it, useful too, as far as referring to tracks in an objective way. But for the main purpose, my main purpose is for the wiki, just to keep everything straight there.
Got it.
So yes, we have tables on every episode page. Like Kanzenshuu, doing scene by scene. And then each track has its own page where it's going to have a table with a list of every place that it's been used, how it was chopped up for that particular usage, and a little thumbnail screenshot, to show you the setting for where it was used.
And not just that, but because this is your area of expertise, for the most part, we try to keep the wiki, I don't know, in quotes, objective, but you can actually do a little bit of musical analysis on these pages and tell us, all right, here's what the composition does. Traditionally, this is meant to evoke this kind of feeling or this kind of mood.
Yeah, and I'm not even really getting into that very much at all, what it's meant to evoke. I usually just describe what is happening objectively in the piece, in terms of music theory. And sometimes just when it comes to how you describe something, you can get into subjective stuff. How do I describe this E major chord that ends the B section, then it goes back to D minor, which makes kind of no sense from a traditional perspective. How do I describe this? There's a bit of subjectivity there, but for the most part, I don't try to say what emotions it's trying to evoke, except when I'm trying to contrast something. For example, like I said, the recap of Battle of Gods earlier, was the first piece in our catalog. That recap has 2 kind of distinct sections, and they're connected by a transition, so it's all one piece. But the first part is used for the recap in the early episodes of Dragon Ball Kai in the Japanese version only, not in the international version. And then when the tension starts to pick up in Kai, they get into the Majin Buu stuff, the second part of that recap track is used for the Kai recaps instead, because it's in a minor key, it's a little bit faster, it's kind of it notches up the tension for the show a little bit. And they use that all the way until after Buu is defeated, then they go back to the first part of the track, which is more of a kind of heroic theme. And I use that word heroic to describe that part. And I really hate doing it, because it's subjective, but it's just to contrast that to the other part of the piece.
How about anything else in the wiki? What do you find that is fun to work on, or that you see other folks are working on that's exciting to peek in on? What gets you out of bed every day?
It's kind of hard I try not to think too much when I'm working on one thing about the other things that I've gotten sidetracked by.
Oh, I know.
For one thing, it's kind of depressing because it reminds me how much work we still have to do, and it's also distracting from what I'm doing. But I do want to get the Angels, Kaioshin, and Gods of Destruction pages ready to go, because those are kind of fun to work on so that we can make those public. So I've been kind of tinkering with those a little bit lately, to try to get them good to go. And then Joe is working on his pages, he's going through movies and specials and stuff like that, making pages for him. And right now he's working on Plan to Eradicate, and he asked earlier if anybody could read the text on this billboard that's in the middle of a city that has the turtle hermit on it.
Yeah, I saw this.
And had to zoom up on it really, really close, and it's in this really, really faint white text, but I could read it, and it says Puff Puff on it.
I love that.
It's yay. So I get distracted by whatever he's working on.
I love that.
He asks questions about it. But yeah, I love how helpful our Japanese fluent people are. You know, we can ask questions and they kind of pile up, but usually there's always somebody willing to come in and answer, help us read something, give us a good translation of something for the wiki.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate those guys.
I don't know how we would even quantify, but there's actually a lot of original translation work going on for the wiki, whether it's, you know, something from a guidebook or a program or a video game, you know, some random bio somewhere. It's really great. And as opposed to something like a raw translation page on the website, which I love those, and those are very helpful. These are also the kind of things where like, all right, here's the bio for this character. Here are the 3 books and the 3 exact pages that piece of text comes from. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah, and we try to do that as much as possible. And that's one thing that I really got into when I was working on the super pages, because I was, you know, just for Reddit, having to keep up with all of the little episode teasers that came out every week.
Oh, right. Yeah. You have a full archive of all that stuff.
Yeah, and Herm's translated like 80 or 90% of it. Is wild how much work he did for that stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, I had all this stuff lying around, you know, that I can use for all of the super pages, all of the interviews that people look for.
Yeah.
You know, where did Shintani say that, you know, he wanted to see green-haired Broly with his shirt off? Where do I find that interview? You know, it's all going to be lined up, everything in the right place.
Yeah, so it's great. You go to a super episode page, and if there's a respective interview that has some kind of commentary about something happening in that episode, you'll have an excerpt from it and a link to the full thing. You got the full breakdown on the background music in the episode, all the contradictory Animedia previews for the episodes. That's all listed and cited. It's great. It's so good.
I even have the preview images that they gave us, you know, towards the end of Super. You know, we would get those little preview images before the episode came out, and everybody would go crazy over them. Yep. So I have all the preview images.
It's all there. There's so much stuff.
In a little gallery, you can just flip through and see what was available to us before the episode came out.
Nice. All right. Here's a big question. When are we launching?
2024.
That sounds fair.
That's my goal.
Well, realistically though, like, what do you think we should have as the basis? We kind of always talked about, all right, we think every animated piece of something, whether it's an episode, a film, or something like that, and every manga chapter, those should have pages that are live because those form the basis for lots of other citations. Does that still make sense as now we're, you know, kind of years into working on this?
As the basis for going live, to have all of those pages created.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's like kind of a good goal, but at the same time, it can get a little bit hairy because there's so much stuff that I want to do for all those pages.
Right.
Like the music tables, for example, and the variation section to talk about, you know, what's different.
It's true.
Between the anime and the manga, what's different between the anime and various dubs of the anime. You know, all that stuff that I want to do for every episode page. Like,
right.
It's going to take years to get that stuff done. So
and that's why,
so we have to,
that's why one of my goals has been, you know, let's get a couple versions of this done and perfected. Like, there should be a few super pages that have all of that done, and those can serve as the basis for whether it's yourself, or probably be you, or someone else moving forward to use that as the perfect ultimate example of how do I make this page? Right. Like I've been doing that with video games where it's, all right, here's the Super Butoden 2 page. This is my ideal of what I think a wiki page for a console game from this time should look like. Here are all the things it should include. I'm not doing Super Butoden 3. Someone else can go do that. But like, here are all the things I think you should use on that. Those are the kind of bases I want to have.
Yeah. So I'm definitely going to do that. But at the same time, you know, I get kind of, you know, even if we do go live with not all of the episode pages done, it's probably going to be me doing it as it goes on. You know, who knows how long it'll take.
I think we all look at that with some of those pages like, oh yeah, that's great. We can, you know, we'll eventually have more people work. No, I'll be doing this. It'll be me.
Yes. Yeah. So Yeah, I may be 20 years late, but I'm with you now.
Excellent. I love it. All right. I think that covers a lot. We're going to have you back on to talk more about all the different projects. Something I wanted to do and we started doing, and then the podcast got away from me was, all right, just check in with folks. What's a new cool thing you learned while you were working on these projects? But for at least right now, I think the what about the projects is helpful to people. So thanks so much. Final words for now.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's good to be here, I guess. It's my first Kanzenshuu podcast.
Awesome. All right. On to the next subject, I guess. Also joining me for the first time here on the podcast. This is like my excuse to get people to come on the show for the first time. I really like this. Ken, formerly known as Detective X, also still occasionally known as Detective X. I don't know. That's how you still sign your artwork, right?
Yes. Yeah. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you. I don't know what advice I have for you. Stop. Get out now because it only gets worse from here. Oh, man. I'm really glad to talk to you because you have been one of the Wiki backbones over this last year. I actually don't remember when I first pulled you in. I was like, wow, he agreed. Oh, shit. This is great.
I think I was brought in because I own the Kanzenshuu.
Because there's only 2 people in the country that own them, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But you were doing a lot of cool stuff on your own. Like you were transcribing things just for your own purposes. I was like, oh, we could use that. And you're like, oh, yeah, you might as well use this. No problem. Then you just went down all these rabbit holes and it's just been great. Why don't you give me, I don't know if it's possible, a brief overview of some of the stuff you have been working on the Wiki?
Sure. The bulk of what I have done has been in transcribing and kind of this is going to sound crass, but double checking a lot of the work Herms has done already.
Right.
Because all of his translations were from the Kanzenshuu, right? And so there's newer stuff than that. Some entries have new sentences in them, so it's really have to double back over a lot of things, like in the Special Attack Dictionary and whatever. So I've been doing that. I started doing some of the GT planet descriptions, which wouldn't be in the Kanzenshuu. Then I moved on to techniques, and I was in techniques for like a year. Yeah, I think. A lot of work. And then I went to items for a little bit, and I said, you know what? I'm going to tackle the timeline. And that's where I've been for the several months now, it feels like almost.
So I kind of want to go in order there. So planet descriptions, I mean, those are just a couple lines out of the Kanzenshuu, and maybe you pull in an episode reference. Like that's pretty basic stuff. And that goes along with, it's kind of like an expansion of the Cosmos guide we were working on the site. There's a lot of stuff that Heath was doing that was originally intended for the site. And then we're like, well, if we do all of this, it's never going to launch. So let's launch this. And then maybe we'll include this stuff on the Wiki. And so we had a list of planets, and that just continues to grow by month with Super these days too. But then you started doing attacks. So tell me a little bit more about the attacks pages, because we do have a couple individual attack pages, but you're more working on the categories or the main listings of things.
Right. So yeah, I'm not going too deep into the weeds on each different attack. So I'm not saying that was used in this episode or this episode. Those will be all for the individual pages. These are just kind of using the guidebooks as a starting point, kind of looking at those. What do those tell us? Do they match up with the source material? If they don't, cite it, put a note, and explain it. So they're just little chunks of information. Here's just the basic outline and when it was first used, who uses it, a little picture, and then we just go from there. There's a certain writing style that I have found in this that is used in the guidebooks that when I try to make entries for like super techniques, like for instance, there's on the transformation page, I had to write a little blurb about Topo's God mode, I think it's called. Yeah. Which, thank God for Dokkan giving us names for things. And so you just have to source from the episode. But I try to make it still seem like this is something this is maybe how it might read in a guidebook.
Because they definitely do have, I've kind of dubbed you my caramel papa as opposed to the caramel mama. Like you very much have, I don't know, like you've really absorbed not just their style, but almost their line of thought sometimes. And then you question the questioning of the line of thought. It's really, really fun seeing you get in the weeds on that stuff.
Yeah, I went too far on the timeline page, I think. of trying to figure out how Caramel Mama came up with some of that stuff.
So we talked about the techniques, the transformations. So these are like the broad categories, but then there is an image and there is a citation for literally everything that we can come up with, whether it's in the guidebooks and then the stuff that's given a proper name. For example, in Super, or I feel like we're even getting into some of the game stuff here and there. You're almost setting the basis for what will come down the road, because we have to have a basis. I feel like if we made a page for Final Flash, all right, that's great, but would it have everything we need to have to then go on and create the Big Bang Attack page? And having this basis, it kind of gives us a guide of where we need to go from here.
It's that, and it's also just finding house brand names for things.
That's true, yeah.
I think one time I asked you, well, what do I call this? And you're like, well, you decide. I'm like, oh, it's too much pressure.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, even when we fused into Kanzenshuu, we reevaluated the entire style guide for the site moving forward. And we've changed that even since Kanzenshuu. For example, we changed our spellings of Bibbidi Bobbidi and Boo to incidentally match what Viz did, which is the way they spell them in Japanese is literally the exact same spellings as the official Japanese spellings for the song in Cinderella. So it should match the exact spelling. So I really do feel like we reevaluate everything almost to an absurd degree when we start working on the wiki, because something that you write totally affects what someone else is going to write. And it's not just that what Heath writes affects what I write. It's now that what you write affects what, a dozen other people are going to write and see.
And it's really something that becomes super ingrained as I work. I mean, there was a couple of weeks ago, I asked you, I said, do we really have to call it Ultra Instinct? Is that what we're still going with?
Right. I think we lost that one, but
yeah.
All right. So, oh geez. All right. Tell me about the timeline a little bit. So we have the history of Ever, which was the rough draft that Jake Herms put together on our forum, which we always intended to develop. And Heath actually did get extremely far into developing into a website proper version, and that just got away from us. Well, we were trying to do a million other things. It was just never going to happen that way. And so you really took up the mantle on this and said, all right, this is my thing. This is what I'm going to do. So you've already mentioned that, all right, you're going from the Kanzenshuu now as a base for some of this stuff. What else are you incorporating? What are you doing? How are you double checking? I don't know, like, what's your process for this? Because it's crazy.
Well, so I jump around a lot. I think that helps keep me from going crazy.
Terez said the same thing.
The timeline is inelegantly elegant.
Yeah.
There's a lot that just falls into place, and then there's a lot that is just so close to falling into place. So yeah, by all means, the history of Ever is the platonic form of everything that I'm working on. It's what I have open all the time, and thank God that Herms documented his sources for everything. So I can go back and I can double check the episode and check the chapter, and I don't have to go hunting for a lot of that stuff myself. Like Pigaro's birth year, and he said was mentioned in the episode, and it's there. Caramel Mama backs it up in the Kanzenshuu and Daizenshu. But then there's Super, right? And where do we put Resurrection F? What are the implications of Beerus's 39 years being asleep? How does this all fit in with Broly? It's a lot of arguing and trying to find out the best way to present the information without editorializing.
Yeah.
Being, especially in the case of Broly, right? Which in the timeline cannot match up with anything we've ever known before, or even the timeline kind of in place of the manga plus Jocko. It doesn't match up by like a good 5 or 6 years. And it's rather than saying like, well, this is what I think should fit and how it should fit. It's just saying it doesn't fit and leaving it there. So it's a lot of just what are we told exactly in the episodes and in the manga, like in the new Super manga, and whether that adds up or not, it's just say this is a contradiction and we just leave it there.
I like that. Is that something that people are very critical of, let's say, other documentation projects where you can't always necessarily tell what is the raw information, what is the citation, the source for that information, and is that being editorialized or expanded on by someone, and who is that someone? You have no way of knowing that. And I think you have been incredibly good about I mean, your your reference sections on all these pages they're perfect. They really are.
They're also out of control.
Yeah, well, that's true. And I don't know if that's a detriment to the page, kind of, but it needs to be there.
And it's, sometimes I come to you and I'm like, well, why don't we have a guide for this kind of citation? Like I'm at the point now where I'm needing to cite Dr. Slump chapters.
Yeah.
And it's just, it never ends. You say I was going down rabbit holes before, but the rabbit holes just keep turning into more rabbit holes and it's never ending.
What is one of the craziest things you're trying to reconcile? Or I should say that you're not trying to reconcile, but you can see that maybe some of the production side of things tried to reconcile, didn't bother, didn't care.
It's absolutely with Super and the amount of times that Shenlong is summoned and how that all lines up or doesn't line up with Bra's birth year in 780. That is the single most frustrating thing. Whether Broly not adding up, I don't care. That could just be a typo on the screen. But you have this evidence of Shenlong being summoned. We know there's a baked in 1 year or 6 months, which was 4 months originally. And technically it was 9 months in between he was first summoned.
Right.
But there's just all these baked in issues that push the timeline further and further and further in the anime. But in the manga, you have instances where, I don't know if it's 1 or 2 instances off the top of my head where Shenlong is not summoned. But the manga, you can fit Bra's birth year in 780 with the Tournament of Power quite nicely. But the anime is its totally own it's a beast. It's why I desire so badly to just have a new guidebook that just tells me which timeline to follow.
Just tell me. Like, I don't care what the answer is, but just tell me.
Yeah, because there are instances like with the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai where it's across several days in the anime and
right.
It's not in the manga. And in the guidebook timeline, it just totally ignores the anime. But it does include the episode before the tournament where Goku's with Konkichi or something.
Sure.
The little fox kid.
Yeah.
So it includes that, but just ignores the rest of the tournament. And it's crazy. I just want answers.
Well, you're in charge of them, so good luck with that. What about the rest of the wiki? What's something that other folks have worked on that you're like, oh, that's really cool. I never thought that we would do that, or I would see that, or that could be done that way. It's
a lot of the work that Terez has done on the Kaioshin pages. It's just pretty phenomenal just to have it all laid out like that. And really, I'm at the point now where instead of trying to search for information elsewhere, I just search what's already in the wiki and I can find it.
That's really awesome.
And that the wiki is already at this point, and I know it's not public yet, and I know that kills people, but it is already at a point where it is super comprehensive. And I think just that alone it's a feat to behold.
So what kind of stuff would you be looking for? Is it like name spellings or episode information?
It's a lot of episode information. So I have access to the work and reference the manga wherever I am, but I don't have that necessarily with the anime.
Yeah.
So I can just be like, well, I know if it happened in this chapter of the manga, it must have happened in one of these 2 episodes. And then I can just go straight to the episode description and look for the little blurb that says what happened. So I know where to list stuff to cite it for when it happened in the anime. What
would you tell people that have been looking forward to this, want to see it? What kind of expectations would you set for people?
I would say set your expectations even higher.
No, that's the wrong answer.
No, it's really not, because it's such a well-presented, coherent, informational piece of content that we are all working on. And we all love working on it, and it shows in everything that we do.
I don't disagree. I mean, I joke about it. I'm like, oh God, like we're not going to even have a page for We Got a Power. Like it doesn't exist. You can't go look up Big Bang Attack. It's not there. We don't have anything. Oh God, there's all these new games and all these new characters. We're not going to have a page for, the item that was on page 5 of the latest Super Dragon Ball Heroes, whatever mission chapter. Oh God, it's not complete. That being said,
we have names for every video game Frieza soldier. So I think we're pretty good.
All right, that's fair enough. I'm having a lot of fun, and I mentioned this with Heath, and I want to say to you and to everyone else that has been working on this, I really thought when we merged into Kanzenshuu. That was 2012. And I had already known Heath and Jake for a little bit at that point, working with them. They've been on the podcast for years. We merged. I'm like, well, this is it. I'm done. I have done everything I wanted to do. The site's just going to coast. Even when Battle of Gods came out, we're like, that's fine. It's just a little thing. We'll cover all this. And it was crazy for a while, but whatever, we're done. I've met everyone I'm going to meet. I've met all of my Dragon Ball friends. And I am so happy to be proven wrong on that fact. I legitimately could not be happier with the friendships that have been forged over this project. And that makes me excited for, like you said, for people to see it, because I think you will see and read the excitement that's underneath it all.
Oh, definitely. 100%.
All right, Ken, thank you. I'm going to have you back on because you have a lot to say about a lot of the pages you've worked on. You already gave us the tease about what people should look for. Any final thoughts? What do you want to toss out there?
Not much. Just be safe. This is a tough time for everyone right now.
That's right. We're doing what we can. I don't know if this podcast helps, and people are like, oh my God, when's a new show coming out? If this is a little thing that I can do to help, that's great. And it also keeps me connected to all you guys at the same time. So awesome. Totally agree.
And I want to promise to everyone we are working as hard as we can to get some of these pages complete so that you all can see them.
That's right. All right, man. Thank you much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heath, Terez, Ken, for joining me, talking about everything that everyone has been working on. That brings it to me. So what the hell do I do all day? Well, I guess I think we mentioned it here, but I do want to remind people that Kanzenshuu is not anyone's actual job. This is all stuff we do in the free time. So for all of us, what do we do all day? We actually go to work. So that's what we do all day. So in our free time, this is what we've been doing. So Mike, in your free time, what have you been doing? Well, in terms of the wiki, let me give you a rundown on some of the stuff that I have been working on and continue to work on. It's all stuff that I find very interesting. I don't know how many other people do, but we all have our pet projects and things that we're excited about are the end products that are the best. I don't know any other way to put it. My number one priority for the wiki is actually Galactic Patrol stuff. I absolutely adore everything about the Galactic Patrol, and of course that's a timely nature right now with the Galactic Patrol prisoner arc in the Dragon Ball Super manga, but with Jaco specifically, and then going back to Sachi-chan and Gia, that really set the stage for it. And I kind of hate phrasing it this way, but I also kind of love phrasing it this way. There's a lot of really bad information out there about the Galactic Patrol. Even just the most basic Wikipedia articles about them. It's like the wrong magazines that they were in. So it's stuff like that, oh God, like we can fix this, we can do this, because we actually own them all and have people that can read them and have read them and can really give you the solid analysis on them. So, it's been one of my priorities to do everything that I can for the Galactic Patrol in the wiki, and maybe that tells you a little bit about how we're expanding a little bit beyond necessarily just Dragon Ball. We may be going outside of that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second too. So that includes for me doing the pages for Sachi-chan Good, Gia, and Jaco the Galactic Patrolman. Now, of course, Jaco we kept up with and have in our manga guide on Kanzenshuu proper, complete, full documentation, everything you need to know about Jaco. And I had been wanting to break out more information on the larger Galactic Patrol series there. So we have just entries for Sachi-chan and Gia, and this is where that ultimately will take you. And one of the pages that I'll tease briefly for you to go check out right now is Sachi-chan. It is live right now. So what does that mean for the rest of the Galactic Patrol? Well, that's those series themselves, but also the characters and the organization as a whole. The main Galactic Patrol page is one of my largest babies there, and that just keeps growing. It turned into something I never could have imagined or envisioned for that page, but I'm really excited about how it's turning out. And I mentioned characters there. Yeah, I am doing some characters here and there. A lot of obscure characters with, again, historically poor documentation. So even some video game characters like Kurillian from The Mystery of Shenlong, Soba from Dragon Ball Z sagas. I'm also keeping up with a lot of current ones, mostly related to the Galactic Patrol. I'm doing a lot of just my favorite characters. There's still no Apul yet, but there is Saibai King, which I think I'm pretty done with, and some others like that. And there's other ones ones where I just end up working on something and then fall down a rabbit hole related to it. So, for example, there's a planet that was mentioned in the Dragon Ball Super manga, and I'm trying to keep up on some planets and especially anything that's Galactic Patrol related, but this was actually prior to that in the Tournament of Power arc. In Viz's English translation of the manga, it was translated as Planet Toale. Now, if you've played Dragon Ball Fusions, you know that there's a fusion of two characters, Toa and Arale, called Toale. So, obviously, if we're working on planets, we're going to go back to the original source material. And Viz is not the underlying source material. The original Japanese version is. So we went there and we're like, actually, with all the surrounding context, there's the Universe 11 Pride Troopers do battle on the planet that is Basu in Japanese. Viz did it as Planet Bas, but we actually think that's Bath. There's the Oshireto race of aliens. Well, that seems to be a play on Washlet. Then there's this planet that Jiren is stated to be on called Toare. You can totally see where they looked at that and said Toare, Toale. Yeah, totally. Let's go with that. But again, if you place it alongside Bath and Washlet, that's probably a play on toilet. So I got thinking, all right, well, I need to do some disambiguations or at least get the skeleton of articles going. And I'm like, well, I really love Dragon Ball Fusion, so why don't I just do the article for Toale? So I ended up doing the articles for Toale and Towane as well. Toa plus Arale and then Toa plus Gine. And I really had a lot of fun doing that. Incidentally, I was doing a complete replay of Dragon Ball Fusions in Japanese and taking millions of screenshots along the way for a variety of projects. So I just had a grand old time doing that. And then that was the kind of thing where it's like, well, I'm doing this. Well, all right. So I'm doing a character page. What does the section for a character's attacks look like? Especially for a character from Dragon Ball Fusions where they can learn a variety of moves. How would I want to lay that out on the page? I just thought it was a great example to do. So I spent a lot of time working on that. Supplemental booklets. So you can probably tell this is something I love. Every time there's a new Jump Victory Carnival, I'm showing off the booklets there. So I'm doing all of those. Obviously important ones like Volume F, all of the Toei Anime Fair pamphlets, the booklets that premiered during the original serialization, doing all of those things. Then the manga itself. So not the main manga, that's effectively done, but porting things from the main website like Episode of Bardock, and then fleshing out additional things like Fusions and Victory Mission with folks like Cypher really helped me out there. I have a lot of larger projects as well that aren't just like, here's a character, here's a story. Things like the Shonen Jump print magazine, which I was with since its preview issue 0. So it's not just the history of that and how it came to be, but a complete listing of anything that, not just Dragon Ball, but Toriyama. Anytime anything from Toriyama, be a series of his, an interview with him, an article about him, anytime anything like that appeared in there, got full table documenting that, and where appropriate, linking over to the press archive there on Kanzenshuu proper as well. A lot of TV stuff, things like Nippon Golden Network and International Channel. Again, stuff that I live through and I go looking for and I just don't find the information. Or when I go looking for information, I end up finding Usenet posts from myself from 20 years ago. And it's just a circular pattern of frustration. In many of these cases, I do ultimately find real resources other than myself, which is fun. Home video stuff, similar to games, where I'm making this like... Oh, did I mention video games? Doing some game stuff. Where I'll make an ideal page. I think you heard me mention Super Butoden 2 in an earlier segment here. Things like what I chose was Funimation's release of Dragon Ball Z Movie 8 on DVD. I chose that because it had the Legacy of Goku 2 bonus feature. So it seemed like a good example of not just a bare bones release, but something that had actual bonus material to it. So documenting that, the pamphlets that came with the DVD. Then things like another one I wanted to choose were the Trunks Prelude to Terror and Mysterious Youth DVDs, and also the VHS release were appropriate because that had the World of Dragon Ball Z bonus feature on it. I'm like, well, why don't I do the World of Dragon Ball Z bonus feature page? So yeah, obviously our mission remains the original Japanese incarnation of everything for the Dragon Ball franchise, but where appropriate and fun and worthwhile, we're totally gonna branch out and to avoid going crazy, work on a couple little things elsewhere. I love history. I love the history of this franchise, but I also love the history of our own fandom. So community pages, tracking the history of this fandom. I'm starting with the most influential fan sites, the ones before me. Things like Kanzenshuu and Toriyama.org, SRETBZ's page, the stuff that was really important and influential to me and to fandom as a whole back then. I think that's really important. And then like Heath, a lot of template work, creating new templates, making ones for myself, editing what other people need. I think it's important to do that from a managerial perspective. Just make sure that everyone has everything they need in order to accomplish what they want to do. So whether that's working on the templates, like I said, if I have to scan something, if I have to go pull out a magazine, pull out a book, find page numbers for people, transcribe things, I'm always more than happy to do that for our wiki editors. I love doing that. The collaboration process is just absolutely amazing. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an overview of what I've been doing there on the wiki. It doesn't sound like a lot, and then I keep a full log of everything that I am working on or have worked on. I scroll through it, I'm like, oh, that's not as much as I hoped it would be, but then I look at some of the pages and go, oh yeah, I spent a couple months on just that one page. So I don't know. I love everything that we do here. I truly, truly do. I hope you heard that enthusiasm. So 2 more things that I want to leave you with before I leave you. One is, so I mentioned Sachi-chan. That's not quite Dragon Ball, but we have full documentation for it here. Yeah, we are, I don't know if we've admitted this to ourselves yet. You heard Ken go like, oh, I need Dr. Slump templates and reference templates so I can do this. Yeah, we're going full on Toriyama here, beyond Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is going to be the priority, the main project, the main point of what we're doing. But as we got going with a lot of stuff, it was like, we really need to have everything else here. Dragon Ball is not the full story of Dragon Ball, and it's not just Dr. Slump either. It's so I was working, for example, on Jaco the Galactic Patrolman. I always love pointing out that on the title page for Chapter 5, Merluza from Toriyama's one-shot Kintoki has a cameo appearance there. And like, I talk about that a lot, and people are probably like, yeah, Mike, we've heard you mention that, 80 times since it came out, but I love it. And then I was like, well, why don't I do the page for Kintoki? And then I was like, yeah, I should do that. Also, I own the actual Jump issue from Kintoki, so I can truly, truly, truly give the perfect documentation for that. We can do Toriyama's comment from that issue. We can talk about what was the colored tint of the page that it was printed on in that issue. What was important about its serialization? How did it tie into some other projects that were going on at Jump at the time? And then we just kept going from there. It's like, yeah, you know what, guys? I think we are. We're doing full-on Toriyama. So for us, it hasn't been just doing those pages, but it's been important to us to own and have and be able to fact-check and independently confirm everything that we're saying here. So we already were going back and getting so many Weekly Jump issues with Dragon Ball's original serialization. Massive, massive credit to Julian, who keeps a watchful eye out as he's over there in Japan. We are amassing Toriyama's full collection. We're very slow right now, and it's not a lot, but there's a lot of stuff that's important to us that we've been collecting and that we've been working on here. So let me share just a few of the really amazing acquisitions we've made recently. And by recently, I mean like the last half year. Let's see if I can roughly go chronologically in order here. So we have Pink, that was printed in Fresh Jump in the December 1982 issue. We have Chobit, not to be confused with Chobits, a very, very different series. Toriyama's Chobit from Weekly Shonen Jump 1983, issue number 10. And that's actually a 3-chapter one-shot. It was Toriyama's entry in the 11th and the final Jump Readers Award competition. He got 3rd place at the time for that. It's 3 chapters, and he also did a regular Dr. Slump chapter that issue. So he called it a quadruple header for himself. It's pretty amazing. Speaking of amazing, very much related to Dragon Ball, some podcast episodes we did a while back were the prototypes and the rough drafts that led to Dragon Ball. And we have that full complete section there in the manga guide. Well, we have Fresh Jump August 1983 issue and a Fresh Jump October 1983 issue with Dragon Boy parts 1 and 2, the original printings of that. And then on from there, we have Weekly Shonen Jump 1983 number 52, The Adventure of Tong Pu, the two real prototypes for Dragon Ball. It's amazing to have those. There's a lot more we want to share about those issues, what's in them, what's different about what's printed in them. I know we covered the series themselves. That was based on their reprints, but there's some pretty unique, fun stuff about the original printings that we'll talk about and will be documented on the wiki pages and the main website as well. Just scrolling through the list here, I'm probably skipping over some, but this is post-Dragon Ball here. Weekly Shonen Jump 1997, double issue 22-23, Booble of Demon Village. We got that issue in. And then we get into a lot of contemporary stuff that we have. Sachi-chan, that's a May 2008 issue of Jump Square. Weekly Young Jump 2010, double issue 2-3, double issue 4-5, and 6. Kintoki, Weekly Shonen Jump 2010, number 50. Then we got a contemporary at the time, but the entire run of Jocko and Weekly Shonen Jump in 2013 when that came out. I know I skipped over one or two in the middle in there as well, but that just gives you an idea of this is the stuff that we can truly say, like, this is the magazine it was printed in. This is what the cover was. This is what it was printed alongside. This is how it fits into Dragon Ball's production, Dragon Ball's history, Toriyama's career. That's really important to us, and I'm really excited about what we have coming in. And so people often ask, and I tweeted this, so forgive me if you're rehearing something that you reread. People are like, all right, you're getting all this stuff, but how does that help us? What does that do for us? All right, so right now, as I'm talking and recording this, we have 5 pages from the wiki that are actually public and live, and a little bit of teases for what we've been doing. To be fair, 3 of them are ones I wrote, but I'm trying to share some other stuff along the way that other people are doing, and we have many more of these coming down the road. So one I put together, and this is almost like a non-starter, but Yamoshi. The stuff I read out there, you hear me doing it again. I'm like, everything else out there was so bad. I can do better. Everything else is so speculative out there. It's like, no, this is actually all that's said. Here's what it's from. Here's a picture of the thing it's from. So I did the Yamoshi page. Hoi Poi Capsule, something Joe, JRP, did. And I'm hoping he can join us back on the podcast again soon. The capsule page is so good. And it's still a little bit in the works as well as he continues to document and put in photos or pics for more of the examples there. But it's just so exhaustive, so wonderful. Another page that Ken did here. So you heard Ken talk about the timeline guide. We put up public age 757. And this is a shorter page. This is where Videl and Son Gohan, the child, not the grandpa, is when they are born. But the reason we chose it is because it's short, but also the notes and the citations on this page, I think give you a really great idea, a glimpse at what Ken is doing and how he's doing it. And then 2 more that I did, and these are Toriyama manga. Well, one is Toriyama Katsura. So Kintoki, Toki of the Golden-Eyed Tribe. Toriyama one-shot. We did a bonus podcast many, many years ago after it came out. More on that soon. I just absolutely adored this one-shot, and we got the issue so I could do the page, and I did. So I really, really love it. One of the neat things to take away from this page is it's not just that Toriyama did a one-shot, but it's actually part of this series of 6 one-shots produced. It was actually, the words are in English. It was this Top of the Super Legend series in 2010 there that different artists contributed to. Kishimoto, Osamu Akimoto had something in there. It's this great little series of one-shots. That's what that came from, and I didn't see any mention of that anywhere in English, so I did it. And that made me really happy. And then something I keep talking about, Sachi-chan Good, the first entry in the Galactic Patrol series. As we're talking about this, I actually just made it live a day or 2 ago. I think that is another great example of, all right, here is what we truly envision this kind of page to be. So I will provide links to those in the show notes for this episode. Go check them out. Give us your feedback on them. We want you to see what we're doing, what we have in mind, why it's taking us forever to pull some of this stuff together. But we're just so excited and we're having so much fun, and we do want you to see some of this work. So I'm going to leave you now. I left you with a lot to think about, a lot to look at, a lot to continue to be silently angry about that you can check out more in full. That's fine. That's fine. I think you hear the dedication and the commitment. I've said this before a few places. We very transparently have spread ourselves too thin over these last few months, and different aspects of the site take hits. Actually, it reminds me a lot of many years back when I was still doing AMVs, where I feel like Kanzenshuu EX would just fall by the wayside for a while as I was working on AMVs for the convention season. And then I would drop those like a bad habit and get right back into the site again. I feel like that's going on right now with the wiki and the website proper for all of us. But there's just so much to do, and we're sorry, but we love it, so we don't really apologize. That being said, www.kanzenshuu.com. This is kanzenshuu.com. You're listening to the podcast from that website. It's a website. Go there, click things, view things, read things, listen to things. It's great. And one other thing I would point you to is actually not on the main website. It probably should have been in retrospect. And that's right before shit hit the fan. Toy Fair up in New York took place in late February, and on the 22nd there. I went up toward the show floor, got photos and video of a whole bunch of stuff. And it seems a lot of the feedback that day was, we've already seen this stuff. They've already announced all this. Well, that's what was there. So that's all I can show you is what was actually there. But I put up a ton of photos on Twitter, so I will link that that tweet thread here with the show notes as well. I will be back at you, I promise, real soon. So again, as I'm recording this right now, 1 hour from now, most of New Jersey is locking down. So I'm going to be home for quite some time, I think. And the rest of the Kanzenshuu folks will be as well in their various bunkers. I'm not going to say I'll have more time because I'm still working, but I'll be around a little more often. So I think there's going to be maybe not more, but different things to share. We have a lot of things we want to get in front of you in 2020. We're excited about it. So that's the site. That's everything. That's the plan. That's the deal. Visit the site. Kick us a line on social media. Love to hear from you. Twitter's usually the best place to hit us up. You can also send us an email if you visit the website there. Click the contact tab. Love to hear from you. Love to hear what you're looking forward to, what you don't want us to work on. I don't know. Maybe we're still going to do it anyway. Blabbing at this point. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let myself go. I've been Mike. Thank you so much. Thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for being there. We're going to continue to be there too. We're kind of all in this shit together right now. So I'll check you soon. All right, everyone. Be good out there. See ya.